I've said this 1,000 times. If I had to trick myself into having to show up, I might not be there yet.
That did sound right. I missed your class when I was 7 minutes. I'll become the class. Okay.
Did you have a good group on Thursday?
We did. It's more, I have to say, like, selfishly speaking, it's really fun for me. Not just aphorisms as we did that. So it's kind of fun to try something different like this.
Okay, I just don't know where to sit. No, that's for you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's interesting. I'm fascinated by the literature of Lojong. I'm just going to read it. We're going to read it if we can. Not all of them. Some of them way too long. But we'll just read them from start to finish and roll on with conversation.
We have 7 in the program. But they're still.
So we have 2 coins, that's one of them. The other one is Lama Michael said Lojong in general.
Yeah, we made the
So I thought, instead of answering your question for the class, because he asked me that and then he didn't tell me, So I thought, well, that's a good question to have in front of our minds. Like, how is that so? And then, it's one of those things where the question, like Michael says, often people say the question is more important than the answer. So for me, it's a good question to roll around in our minds. How is that so?
Never have it done.
So I'm not that. How is that so?
Yeah. Next year.
It's interesting.
That's true.
I just took an online retreat with Warren Wallace. It was a 10-week seminar on Dzogchen. And then I just went and took a teaching from Khenpo Sewang. So it's an interesting place to be in that sort of framework, and then relay that back to some points of interest. So then that question of how is it a complete transformation?
There's no details, but
even more has more momentum because of these other things. And Alan, of course, thinks it's points of interest all the time, which is also fascinating to me.
How are you?
Person third that see how to help you. It's open for that's helpful. That means we can, at least that means we can non-stop, because even if nobody needs open, which has been the case before, where it'd be one person or no person. But I told you I wanted to show up.
I just printed one today without seeing something.
She said, good. So I thought, uh-oh. And that's it. Now I have no out. Sometimes it's just been me sitting on that bed. In the dark. Well, I said I would.
Yeah, I've been helping definitely iron out alternating with the new company apps. And you just never know with that what you're gonna get.
It just says my entry. I think that's what it's like. Maybe we can look at that one's
I can't overestimate the importance of
make some changes.
because that's it was making that's really why I'm sitting here right now. And it was Juliet, and she helped me see that this was what I needed to do.
I think that
And I'm a number 1 non-joiner. I never would do it. I couldn't. I didn't want to. didn't feel right.
I'm just,
When
I wish I had met something.
people chanting in foreign language
Well, we
makes it feel
can't
weird.
do
Can't do everything.
I don't want it in there. Because I can't overemphasize that.
Just got one.
Just got to bless it.
Oh, were they?
The kids, they were marvelous. Did anyone announce that it's cleaning day?
Yep.
Okay, good. That,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's this
good.
afternoon, right?
Yeah, later this afternoon, come at 5 and clean. Right, for whatever didn't get done at 11.
Yeah, he said you were in charge.
Cynthia,
I have a question about what's appropriate to put on the shrine, because there are often times when things happen in the world that for me seem tragic, and I think, oh, I should put a picture of that person who was murdered on the shrine. And then I think, oh, it's KCC, I'd probably have to put a picture of the person who committed the murder on the shrine too. And then I think, oh, other people might see these photos and get upset for one reason or another, and maybe I shouldn't put anything there. So in a public shrine, what's appropriate?
what's the what?
What's appropriate? What's
What's
acceptable
appropriate?
to put up there?
It's a great question. So the question is on a public shrine, what's appropriate to put up, and I'll just leave it at that. But I want to say that this is actually something that even in Tibet they struggled with this a lot, with certain kinds of images that were kind of officially restricted to even be viewed by people who had done the appropriate practices and had the appropriate understanding and all. And even today you go to monasteries and you'll see that there's like things over some of the paintings and things so that they can't be inappropriately viewed, where people might think might have the wrong idea about what they are. So I think, but I remember once in Ladakh, I went into a monastery and they had like a lot of the paintings covered with cloths, just draped. And they said, we only bring these out once a year during a certain ceremony. So their appropriate was that people could view it, but just for a short time during the ceremony, and then they'd be covered again. And so I think you might draw from that the appropriate conclusion, which is that it's not easy to know what's appropriate. Because as you said, somebody could come and have this, but somebody means it's a question mark. And you never know what response somebody's going to have. So I'm not sure that the question can be resolved by virtue of a well thought out formula. How's that?
You're on your own.
You'll know whether it's appropriate by virtue of the rumors they spread after they've seen it.
So what's appropriate on the KCC shrine and who decides?
What's what? Sorry?
What's appropriate on our shrine and who decides? I mean, I think Cynthia's question is about, if she particularly, I don't mean to speak for you, but you've had ideas of things that you wanted to put on the shrine and didn't.
Yeah.
Dot, dot, dot. I mean,
Could look at the shrine and see what other people have done and kind of get a feel.
Well, if I stick with that, it would seem to be appropriate to put up people who have died, but only ones that somebody knows for the most part, not necessarily more public figures.
Well, shrines are funny things. There's, everywhere you go, people will do different things with shrines, and the shrine that's here, which was there exactly like that when I first came here, and I never said it should be changed or anything, but it doesn't look anything like my personal shrine. I would never put a shrine together like that, but that doesn't mean that this one's wrong. It's totally good. But the shrine is meant to be a support for your practice, for your meditation. And if it's a group of people come, then it should be a support for the group's meditation somehow. And if you go to India and go into a Tibetan monastery, you'll see extraordinarily elaborate shrines with things on them that probably most of the monks in the monastery don't know what they're for. Just like it's like a museum piece. And then if you were around when Chogyam Trungpa was around, what you got was a crystal ball and a candle. And the candle was in front of the crystal ball. It was always exactly the same, and that the crystal ball represented the emptiness of the Dharmakaya, and the candle was the appearance. So the clear, empty appearance of all things, and that formula was used widely in the whole world of places. I mean, he had thousands of Dharma centers. So there's something that you can at least easily understand it in the sense that you could say, well, it's the union of appearance and emptiness. But whether or not even the person who could say that would know what that was another thing. But at least you had an easy way to relate to it. And it included, symbolically, every possible arrangement of the shrine that you could imagine, because they all basically were fundamentally empty and clearly appearing. So, it was wonderful. At the time, I really appreciated it because I couldn't relate to the shrines at that time at all. So I thought that was really, really nice. So also on this shrine, for example, this is like a 3-level shrine. So normally the level where there's candles and water offerings there, that level is normally reserved for offerings of some kind. And the second level, we normally put like pictures of teachers and other symbolic things. And at the very top are the Buddhas. So sometimes even a picture ends up on the top. So if somebody thinks their teacher is a Buddha, they may end up putting the picture of that person on the top. In which case, somebody who doesn't like that teacher will be offended when they see it. So, if you think that you can avoid these complications by putting a shrine a certain way, give up. Yeah, and even if we have a teacher come here, they may very well say, yeah, you should move that and do this and that, and another person would say that differently, quite possibly. It's, that thing about hand grenades and horseshoes. If you play horseshoes, you just have to get close. Same with hand grenades. So this is this is what this is. It's a matter of getting close to what it is and having a sense of what it is that it's for. So when you look at it, when you gaze at the shrine, you're meant to have a sense of the richness of the imagery, of the symbols, of the pieces that are presumably and hopefully part of your meditation practice. So the teachers that are up there ideally would be teachers that you know. If not teachers that you know, ideally, it depends. If it's your personal shrine, I wouldn't put images up on it that you're not familiar with. But if it's a shrine where more people come and practice, then having it a little richer is also appropriate and helpful. The idea is it's helpful. It's just helpful for your practice. You sit down and you gaze at it. If you've met the Dalai Lama, if you've met the Karmapa, if you've met great teachers, to have images of their pictures up there can be an inspiration. You see it, you recall things, and then you feel like, it's great, I'm sitting here, I'm about to begin my meditation practice. And then you begin and you have that kind of support. I wouldn't just put pictures up on my personal shrine. I wouldn't just put a lot of pictures up for the sake of having a lot of pictures. And many people do that, but I wouldn't do that. What do you think? Now you're supposed to say, that was great, thank you very much.
It's good food for thought.
Good food for thought, yeah. Don't eat the shrine. Yeah.
That made me think of something when you said food for thought, because if we're doing a Vajrayana practice where we're making a food offering and we put that on the shrine, how long is it appropriate to keep that on the shrine?
Normally offerings made on the shrine as food offerings are like gone at the end of the day.
Okay.
But there's exceptions to that also. Like if you're doing a retreat and the shrine is an important piece in the retreat, there's some instances where you leave the food there for the duration of the retreat, except in the case where they would get moldy or something. But especially with wrathful deities, then sometimes you put something there and it's actually considered a good offering if it does get moldy. So it's really, these are issues that are particular to specific practices that you're doing, and the only reason I mention it is just because there's a wide diversity of what's appropriate to put on a shrine and at what time and how long you leave it there. Normally we empty the water every night, every day at the end of the practice time. At some point we empty the water, you wipe out the bowls, you turn them over, and there's a lot of rubric and reasons why one would do it in that certain way. But if someone doesn't know about all of that and does it in another way, it would be completely inappropriate to challenge them on that score. So that's all by way of saying the shrine can play a really big place in your practice and give you a sense of, this is where I sit down to engage in the practice, and and I manage the shrine in a way. I clean it regularly, and some people clean their shrine every day. Some people do it every decade. So, I think it's important for you to feel like the shrine is a support for your practice. And if it isn't a support for your practice, then make the changes and or talk to people who know shrines and work something out. Do you have anything?
There's a
You're a
really
shrine person, I know.
interesting story about shrines, which is this guru named Guru Ben, who's kind of famous because he was such a mind training practitioner. And his teacher and some high lamas were coming to his place. And that day, because they were coming, he like shined everything up and did all this. And then he started watching himself, like, what's this about? And he realized that he was totally stuck on reputation, praise, how they're going to think of me. And so he took a bunch of ashes and threw it on the shrine right before they came to defeat his, this is the mind training stuff, come to the mind training on every other Thursday. And
We'll throw ashes on you.
he just, well, we'll do that next time, especially if you're proud. We'll have to throw them on ourselves first, right? But, you know, you see, I mean, it's about practice. The shrine's about practice. It's not about what do people think when they see my Lala. But at the same time, I will say, early in my practice, when I was a very wild horse, and I could hardly sit at all, I would go to my shrine every morning and set up the water and the food. And that physicality, that physical thing got me grounded. It was like I just at least went there, put the water up, said refuge, ran away. So in the evening, took it down, dedicated, ran away. But pretty soon, you know, it's habit, and pretty soon you're there longer. So if it supports your practice, great. If it's supporting your praise and reputation, well, it's not Dharma.
Tim, yeah.
This is today about in the shamatha practice. You said a couple things that I wanted to ask a question about. One was similar to things that I've heard before about noticing when your mind has moved away from the object of attention. And I have said to other folks in this room right here about how that's a common thing that we hear, that noticing that your mind has moved is as important as anything else in shamatha. And so I've begun to think that noticing has some quality that is like enlightenment itself. That I'm saying this to myself. I'm wondering if I'm telling myself a good thing or an untruthful thing. That noticing is like enlightenment. It has the quality of enlightenment because it is in fact awareness itself. So it seems like there's been an emphasis here since I've been coming here in shamatha on practicing noticing, on that as a key element to shamatha practice. So how does that seem to you? Noticing.
It seems like a lot of things. Noticing is a big word. You know, it's for example, here's the little thing I have to announce about cleaning, and I can see that. I can see that. Maybe I just notice it when I sit down out of the corner of my eye, and I don't actually. That's it. I just see it. Is that noticing?
Yeah.
Then what's not noticing?
Well, when your mind wavers from the object of attention and you don't see that at all. It just happens. There's no awareness around it.
So if I just see that out of my corner of my eye, it's not noticing.
No, I think it is.
It is noticing.
Yeah.
So what's not noticing?
Yeah, not seeing it. Or seeing it and not being aware of it, having no
Yeah.
awareness about that.
I think there's a little distinction to be made with the awareness piece.
Okay.
When we are distracted in our shamatha, we can have this sense of aversion to the thoughts and feelings and perceptions that arise in the mind. And this morning, the point that I wanted to make was that the thoughts and feelings and perceptions are actually not the fundamental problem. That's where we go first, because we have the sense that shamatha is about calm abiding.
Yeah.
You know, not hurricanes and tornadoes, but
Yeah.
calm abiding.
Yeah.
But we're also familiar with, at least conceptually, the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, maybe an important metaphor in this context, because the real issue here is not about getting rid of the thoughts and the thoughts and perceptions and feelings and things that arise, because we hold this unbounded view, like you're taking them to the grave with you, and they're not gone there. They continue. So the practice of sitting in the eye of the hurricane is actually really important, so that it actually doesn't matter how fast the wind of our distractions is blowing, if we can just sit there and remain conscious of what is going on without engaging in, like, this is terrible, this is great, this is, I wish it would stop, I wish it would do other things, whatever, all our usual things. Instead of all the usual things, we just sit and notice. If you want to use the word notice, that's fine. But I think bringing awareness to the noticing is important.
Okay.
So I see this, and it's, I mean, how many things do I see every day that I do not name, I do not really consciously notice in any way at all? And I think really when we're talking about awareness and more deeply, awareness of awareness, now we're talking about an ability to see a fundamental function of the mind. And what it sounds like, if you conceptualize it, is that there's another being, or there's another mind that sees itself seeing. But of course, in a way, while that makes sense when we write it on paper, when we try to work with it in our own minds, it's like, that does not make sense. Because we're not actually able to find another mind, and if we do, we probably should get some help.
Yeah, there's a clinical definition for that. Yeah.
It's called samsara.
Merely seeing and knowing that you're seeing, and knowing that it is a clear appearance, is a lot. Just a clear appearance, nothing else added onto it. So forget the emptiness bit, it's a clear appearance, period. That's it. Nothing more. That is very helpful. Now that's what we would call, this is really kind of the high relative truth, as it were. The relative truth is that things appear, and they don't have inherent meaning or value. The appearances are just appearances. They're like waves on the ocean. One of them could knock you out. One of them could kill you. One of them could knock you free of a wave. It's like, but there's no intention. It's just appearances coming. So I think the same is true even when we think. Bodhicitta, the awareness of the suffering of all beings and the wish to resolve that suffering, is also a clear appearance. Though when we think like that, when I think I will practice for the benefit of all beings, we generally think I need to drive my practice by virtue of that intention. And that's good. But an even higher good is that you do that without too much thinking about it. Like we do with all things. Most of the things we do without consideration. Because we're habits. I want to say like habitual beings, but more accurately, you could almost say we are habits. And habits are like rain, they fall.
Yeah.
They do things.
Yeah.
And we don't notice it too much. As long as we don't get in trouble or cut ourselves or burn ourselves or something, we don't really notice that we're engaging in a habit.
Yeah.
So the idea of seeing certain things, I think, is really helpful. It's also helpful to note that I see that thing, but I also see it through the habitual eyes.
Yeah.
So when I look at this and I think, I have to make an announcement. Just slide it under there, maybe it'll disappear, and no one will notice. And that's a habit. That's a habit. So how do I deal with that habit? I put it there, and I think this is my antidote to the habit. The habit of like, I don't do this, so now I do it. I don't like to do it. Now I have to put something there that makes me like to do it. So it's not that there's any value in not liking or liking, but there's a value in recognizing.
Thank you.
It's complicated. In one sense, it's complicated. It works best if we can acknowledge, if we can see one small thing about our practice that we can really focus our Dharma on. So this is a piece of the mind training, right? It's like you find the thing that is most difficult, and then you just bring every one of the mind training aphorisms, every shamatha practice, everything else. You just like call everything in, and just you focus on it and make that obstacle your entire practice. And we tend to want to think, I'm not really kind of an angry person, but I do have a little bit of anger, so I'll focus on that a little bit. It's a dead end. It's a dead end because it's too easy. And it's actually also not that much easier than working on the big stuff. So the big stuff is an inspiration. The little stuff is not much of an inspiration. I mean, if you only have a little anger and you overcome it, nobody even notices. You don't even get any self-aggrandizement. So if you have a big anger head, and that's like really a big habit that you've got, and you overcome that, people will start saying, wow, you've really made a change. And while that is not the purpose of the practice, it can also be translated as a kind of support, like a report card. People, when they see me, no longer run. That's nice. And I mean, we laugh at that, but there are people who actually have that experience that people run from them. Maybe not run, but they move away, they avoid. And that's a terrible experience to have when you realize that people are afraid of you. So it's not like all self-aggrandizement is really terrible. A small amount could be an antidote to something. Let's see. Are we making progress? Did we do anything?
Thank you.
Sound like.
So I've really been struggling with my daily practice
Why don't you do
recently.
this, then I don't have to repeat you.
I've really been struggling with my daily practice lately. And so this week I thought, well, if I can't practice, I can at least try and look at why I'm not practicing.
Yeah. Mm.
And it occurred to me that the reason I'm not doing my practice was not any of the obvious things that I thought it was, that I'm overwhelmed at work and tired and not sleeping well. It's not like I sleep in, I get up at the normal time, I just do something else for that hour. But I realized if I go upstairs to my shrine room and I sit, I cannot avoid myself. Like I'm there, and my life is there, and I don't really want to be there. Like I don't really want to be in my life right now. And I'll set the intention when I go to bed. I'll set the intention when I get out of bed, and I'll still just find myself doing something else.
You mean mentally? Or do you mean actually
Like
physically doing
physically,
something else?
like
Yeah.
doing something else, yeah. Not going upstairs, not sitting down, not doing the practice.
And you don't recognize that that's what you're doing, or you do?
About half the time I do recognize that I'm doing it, but I still do the something else. And, really, I've been trying to probe that thing and realize I feel scared. Which is kind of my biggest thing. Like, I'm not an angerhead. I'm somebody who is afraid.
You're a fearhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in my life that makes me feel a lack of security and a lack of comfort.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that and thinking, well, this is really bad.
Really bad?
Really bad. Like, my practice is supposed to be my refuge when I'm overwhelmed with fear. And if I can't go to it, if I can't cling to it, now when it's just a bunch of disruptive stuff about my work and my financial life, how the hell am I going to do it when I'm dying, when I'm sick, when I'm like afraid of the destruction of this body? And I'm just wondering, like, how do I make that jump so that I'm actually willing to work with the thing that's hardest?
I really appreciate your raising this. I think it's like so common. We all want to work. We all want to put more time into our practice than we do, and I think that's the case whether you practice an hour a day or 12 hours a day. We all want to, because we have a sense, a kind of even a confidence that that's how you get the promise, is that you engage in the practice and you're almost like a bulldozer, like I move through it whether I want to do it or not, whether I enjoy it or not. But that's also, that's what you read. That's what's in the books. And then we can read like so-and-so was successful and they overcame all these obstacles because they just like plowed through it over and over and over again. And I can't do that. And so therefore, my report card doesn't look so good. That's not an example, by the way. That's actually my report card. Doesn't look.
So you're just like us.
Well, I think that a significant fraction of my Dharma practice has been plagued over the last 40 years, even, with wanting too much. And so we try to do too much, and the result is that it doesn't go well. I make this promise to myself. I'll meditate every morning when I wake up for half an hour, and then in the middle of the day at lunchtime I'll do a half an hour, and at night I'll do a half an hour. So we've got about, an hour and a half in there where we're committed to practice, but somehow it doesn't happen. And little by little, then we get kind of depressed about it. So then we try all sorts of things. We go and get some teachings from somebody, or maybe we go somewhere new because, it's obvious the teachings didn't work from where I got from. Somewhere else, and maybe that'll work. And sometimes it does. It's not like it doesn't. And I don't think that it's phony. It's like we're really honestly trying to get to the bottom of this thing. And so that's why I come in this morning and I say, let's look at bodhicitta a little closer than we normally do, so that we can have a relationship with it and another tool in the tool bag. And we all know that you really only need one tool. And it could be one of dozens of tools. All you need is the tool you actually use. The rest of them don't count. And you can't work with all of them at once. And everybody says you only really need one. But also, we're Americans. Which translates into impatient. We get things done. So if we're not getting things done, then we feel that's not good. I'm not living up to the standard here. And most of us will be cynical about Americans, which is a strength and a weakness at the same time. But then we get cynical about ourselves, which is not a strength. That's actually like really debilitating. So all of that boils down to what I really think is skillful, is that we each need to find the tool or the very small number of tools that actually works for us. And sometimes it's helpful to just explore those things. Like, for example, I have found, generally speaking, if I am, and you might find this weird, but leading and working with a 3-year retreat is not always a support for practice. It just isn't. People get into conflicts, and then you help them with the conflict, and you feel good about the conflict, they feel good about the conflict, and you feel like, well, that was good, and at the end of the day you realize, I didn't actually do any practice. And then there's things you have to do, and so then you do those things, and then another day goes by. It's just like, it's like real life. The fact that it's this kind of holy endeavor of a long retreat just is not enough.
Ring the bell on that one.
Yeah. So what I find is, go for the small. Skip the big and go for the small. I remember with somebody as an issue because they were having conflict and they were not able to deal with it in the way that they thought they should deal with it, because they're in a long retreat and they have all the tools, they know the tools, and they still are yelling at each other. And so I said, you need to take a piece of paper and write something on the back of it that's really honest. I hate my practice. Okay, now there's something to work with. You know? New starting points. You know? It doesn't have to be all the time, but every hour or two is pretty good. And what it means is that instead of trying to resurrect the Amazon River and the jungles down there, you plant a seed. Just plant a seed. So you say, for example, that person who I'm having a conflict with, they deserve enlightenment as much as I do. I actually believe that teaching. That teaching I believe. They deserve it as much as I do. Neither one of us is able to do it. Therefore, I can feel bad about both of us. You know? So, okay, there's a seed. I feel bad about my intransigence and my ability to create conflict, and I feel bad about my inability to fix it somehow. So I plant a seed. I mean, you got a bag of 1,000,000 seeds anyway, right? You'll never run out of seeds. You could throw handfuls of seeds and you'd never run out of them. But what you really want to do is plant one seed at a time. In this moment, I do believe all sentient beings, even those who feel certain they are happy, are actually probably mostly engaged in exactly the things that are going to make them miserable. And therefore, I give rise to the wish that I could do something about that. Done. How easy is that? Snap, isn't it? I mean, just take something that you feel confident in, some small thing, and just do that. Plant it. In this case, plant is you're just planting a seed in your own mind. I wish that I could be around people that I'm conflicted with, who from time to time don't like me, and have at least occasionally the wish for their well-being, and occasionally see them as worthy beings who are troubled like I'm troubled. And that's it. Done. Move on. If you could do that, let's say 25, 30 times a day, my guess is everything will change. And there's nothing, we're not looking for anything. We're not looking for calm, the calm mind, you know. That thing that never existed. You gotta ask, why do I want it? Since I've never seen it. Every time that we're meditating and we decide, I'm taking a 10-second break, that's when we're meditating. You know, that's the truth. That really is. That's where it's supposed to happen. The formula by which we meditate formally is a formula that leads us to the place where we let go of the formula and discover the actual meditation. So when we're sitting and engaging in the practice and it's not working, whatever that means, and we decide, or we hear ding the bell, time for a 1 minute or a 10-second break, whatever it is, we have to, what's the instruction? Let go of the meditation. Don't reject it. Don't hang on to it. Don't try and put a placeholder so I'll remember where I was in my series of distractions, which are really clearly more important than anything else. Don't do any of that. Just stop for a moment. And if thoughts arise, well, of course thoughts arise. So you're actually moving into a much bigger minded place than in our little tiny pinpoint center of the hurricane, we move into the bigger place where everything becomes possible. Just for 10 seconds. So that's a pretty potent seed. Plant 20 of those a day and you have a garden. And it's so simple. Personally, that's what I have found in my own experience to be the most helpful. I can be totally offended by something that somebody says, and if I can just get 3 seeds out, I mean, the entire highway changes its direction. But I don't want to just change the direction. I want deep realization. And so I don't plant the 3 seeds, and the rest of the day I'm miserable. And not only that, because I'm miserable, I hold the person who I'm trying to help responsible for my misery. And this is not the path. So the game here is, how many seconds can you remain on the path? How fast you're going is irrelevant. The direction and all kind of irrelevant. How fast, how long can you just remain there? You sit down in front of your shrine and you're distracted. So you just kind of like acknowledge that. If you can't just put your awareness on the distraction, which is actually a very kind of exalted practice, in fact, because it's like you've never ridden a bucking bronco before and you decide you're going to ride one, that it really only takes intention. The next thing you're in the hospital. So we don't get in the hospital. We just feel like I'm wasting my time. It's not working. And the thing is that all we need to do is take 1 seed of all the practices we've done and just engage in it for 10 seconds. And then totally let go of it. Totally let go of it. Make a mark on the paper. It doesn't have to be it's just a mark. It doesn't point to anything, it's just a mark. But in that moment it kind of says, I did it. I did it. What the it is, don't pay any attention to that. It's somebody else's business. You know, you just like kind of acknowledge, I brought my mind to the object. It rested there about as long as a marble resting on another marble rests. But it's okay because I saw it and it went by and it's okay. And I'll have 1,000 of those today, but 30 times today I'm putting the marble on the marble. And that can just be, I bring my mind to the place of whatever my distraction is, whatever my emotional state is, whatever my perception is, this memory going through my mind. I just bring my awareness there just for a moment. I just kind of rest it. And then I'm distracted. It would have been better to stop before we're distracted, but in the moment that I put my mind there, I actually saw it. Better to have quit then instead of waiting until I was distracted, but that'll be tomorrow. Today, I put my mind on it, that's it. So, check. Don't put any description around the check, just check. And move on to another one. And you can do this 1,000 times a day. You're walking from wherever you are and you're walking by a window. You gaze out the window and you can hear yourself say, "Oh, it's a beautiful day." Well, that's a little distraction. You just put your awareness on that experience, on that thought. Another thought arises, you just put your awareness there. Just done. Like, you want to stop way before you're carried away. You just want to do it 1,000 times. It's like a boat going down Niagara Falls. You know, there's places where you could get out of the boat. But if you can't quite bring yourself to because it's too exciting, then you get the big excitement. So, in this case, with our meditation, we have to stop before it goes south, or whatever direction that fall goes. That's the trick. Bring your mind there and stop. That's what we're doing when we say, take a little break. I hear like Lama Eric during the retreat, he shortened the space between the breaks. You can shorten the space between the breaks down to a second. If it works and you actually get 1 second where you feel like that was it, that's now you know what it looks like. So don't imagine that because you caught a minnow you need to catch a marlin. You just keep doing it like that. 1,000 times a day would be great. 10 times a day would be really, really good.
So can I just, so what you're saying is if you're bringing your awareness all those times every day and planting those seeds, then it isn't as important to be sitting on the cushion in front of your shrine if you're able to carry the practice into, I mean, if that's what it takes.
Planting the seed is a kind of carrying the practice, but it's very short. So, not to lose track of, what we want to do is we really want to stabilize it. So that it's just like we're there, like aware, like all the time. So I find that helpful to remind myself that's what we're really doing. That's what we really want to do. But that's not where we are. So I would like to have a garden filled with a multitude of vegetables and things too, but I can't have that tomorrow. I can't have it today. So for the next few days or the next few weeks, I'm going to have to go to New Seasons and buy my vegetables. But at some point, if I keep putting seeds out there, the garden will be there. So if I keep bringing my mind back to my current experience, just for a moment, like putting a marble on the marble, it's not going to stay. I will have the experience of having put it there carefully, then let go of it, and ding, falls off. It's okay. You put it there. You know how to put it there. You do that by putting it there and putting it there and putting it there and putting it there. And then at a certain point you realize this can't possibly, the stable marble on the marble cannot possibly be the actual practice. But the practice was learn how you put it, how you place it there. And at some point, your awareness will remain stable while the marble rolls off. You'll be distracted, but your awareness of the distraction becomes the practice, which is actually the practice. Okay? Like it or not? By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Before we move around, we have an announcement, but it's not written down. Eric Frome and Chosen Bays are starting a class on death and dying. It's going to be Sunday afternoons. I'm looking at Ryan for prompts. It starts October 2nd.
Which is next Sunday.
Next Sunday.
3:30.
And it'll go through 6 or 8.
It's 8 consecutive Sundays.
8 consecutive Sundays for a couple hours in the afternoons. And there's a flyer up there about it.
And there's also...
Why don't you finish it?
There's some new flyers that I've planted on the bulletin board. There's that there's a poster for that event. There's also a Mahamudra support group class, the last one in the series, which is the following weekend on Saturday morning. That's on focuses on the mandala practice. And there's the mind training study group, which has come up, which is second and fourth.
Second and fourth Thursday of every month.
Yes.
Is that schedule
7
posted?
to 8:30 we started. We had a delightful time, and Tim is leading that, and we're
Is that
along
posted?
with me, and we're having a good time. And the new book for it is out on the bookshelf called Essential Mind Training.
And it is posted on the
It is
website.
On the website, but not here.
It is here. It is
Okay.
here now on the bulletin board. Yeah.
And there is a children's blessing at the end of October, the last Sunday of October, the 30th, I believe.
Yeah. All children are welcome to that.
More to come.
Okay.
Where are you going to draw that line?
All
Speaking
children.
of
They can all come.
The young adult group meets this Friday,
Young Adult Group Friday at
7 to 9.
7 to 9, and Holly leads that. See her if you have questions. And it's cleaning day. There's a lot of positive momentum to be gathered by cleaning our space. So out in the kitchen, there's a bulletin board with little tasks on it. You just pull one off, turn it over, go do the task. There's cleaning things out there. And if everybody does one, it takes 20 minutes and it turns beautiful. So thank you.
And I
So
just,
Libra.
yes, I just want to introduce everybody to my friend and neighbor Angela, who's having a really delightful time here today.
Thank you.
So, do you want us to all carry our cushions out?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Will you tell people what that is?
If everybody carries their cushions out to the porch and bangs them, and then we can clean the floors and bring the cushions back. So whatever cushion you're sitting on, and if there's an extra one, grab it too. Beat them lovingly on the porch.
Thank you.
And then pile them up.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes.
We have posters for the mind training. Okay. As it appears that the